We're recording.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us on Sunday, October 31st, 2021, Global Technopolitics Forum's Research Team Sunday meeting. So I'd like to start this meeting with asking Jennifer. Jennifer, do you have any update for us?
Yeah, so I've been trying to take a more analytical approach to what's happening in China, being like do less of the news stuff, but most of what I'm reading is definitely tied into like news happenings. And the research I did this week focused on the 20th Party Congress and how that upcoming event is probably a huge catalyst for the cyber crackdown. Because there's been a lot of criticisms of Xi Jinping over the last few months and years, particularly like handling the pandemic. A lot of, talk about like doctors who tried to warn about COVID and they were silenced or arrested, floods, things that are happening on WeChat, like a variety of things. The reason that like Xi Jinping is under scrutiny. So there's speculation that all of this crackdown is really meant as a form of displaying that he has control over like the uncontrollable, which would be tech giants. And it kind of just focused on how everything he's doing is a political move, starting with the stopping of the Ant Group IPO, because a lot of prominent people involved in Ant Group with major shares are politically prominent and people who, are political rivals or descendants or relatives of political rivals of Xi Jinping. So that initial crackdown was meant to be him asserting his dominance. And that is kind of where I looked at this past week. And I thought that was a pretty good hint of deeper level of why he as an individual leader is doing this. On top of that, in previous weeks, I've looked at the fact that he has from the start been a more conservative leader than the one before, who really wanted to open up China and turn them more Western and capitalist. So I think, who Xi Jinping really is as a leader and his leadership style, combined with the fact that he's feeling threatened and this need to assert his dominance before this big meeting is what's really driving this crackdown. And that's what I was looking at this week.
That sounds good. Sounds interesting.
The
Party Congress is going to be a catalyst in one way or another. We know that for sure.
Yeah. Any comment, Paul?
None particularly. Only just a question maybe about where the pressure points are on Xi Jinping. Like, where is he really feeling the pressure from? And I'm not so sure. Well, I don't know. To me, it's not so clear. Mm-hmm. My sense is, based on the action that he's taken, that one of his big concerns is more and more people feeling that they've been left behind, which is a traditional risk in China or challenge. If you look at Chinese history, it's usually peasant revolutions that topple whatever government has to be in place. And since there are a lot of peasants in China, I'm using the term peasants loosely, it's a significant fear. So all these moves about trying to, and the rhetoric about having a more equal and balanced society, taking shots at the tech giants, is it really the tech giants, or is it the heads of the tech giants who happen to be some of the richest people in China, to show that he's somehow figuring out how to lessen that gap between the rich and the poor? To me, that's sort of an important narrative to consider.
Yeah, and I think he started a campaign of winning the hearts and minds of people. So it's kind of some time ago, he started to switch and focus on winning the mind and heart of people, which I think it's quite, aligned with what the way Paul is saying it. Puran, I'm sorry I interrupted you, please.
For me, China problem is at two levels. One, that they are in deep economic crisis. Their physical deficit is going up. The companies are getting downsized. Some of their real estate companies are booking sort of losses, which is getting very difficult for the political leadership to be able to come to grips with. So on the one hand, they are battling a very deep-rooted economic problem. because nobody knows what is happening in China. I have dealt with Chinese from very close quarters, very hard to sort of figure out, what they think, what they do, when they do. It is pretty hard to. So one is this economic problem. The second one is that social turmoil, given the fact what the leader in China is doing, is also getting reflected on people. So there is at another level, people are not very happy. They're also trying to figure out what may or may not happen. So it is at that level as well. And then the premier has opened several geopolitical fronts. On the one hand, in Himalayas, India and China, trade wars are happening with the US.
Right.
Even Europeans are not very certain with regard to what policy should they really adopt on China. So Europeans have not been able to decide very definitively with regard to what the China policy could be. And now the Europeans are looking at multipolar Asia. And I had sent you a little thing where I tried to highlight European policy on Asia, where they're trying to sort of say it out very loudly that Asia is no longer driven by China. There are other players also who need to be taken into account. So it's at multiple levels. And I think while we continue to engage, both philosophically, academically, and otherwise, but keeping an eye on what happens next into China and with the senior people within the Politburo will be very, very helpful. And then the coming Congress, a Communist Party, meeting would be very, very important for us to follow through. So this is what I would say, because Chinese is pretty hard to know anything about. I'm sorry, but I'm saying something based on what I have experienced while working with these people.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we figured out that his policies are also the party is not united behind him. So he's threatened, and some of the policies definitely are leading to that, trying to ensure his position and the fact that he will be successful in next year's meeting. So yeah, we're following that and we will see. Thanks, Jennifer, for the word.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next for us is to probably turn this good work and the proposal we did into a white paper.
Yeah.
As you say, Puran, there's lots of uncertainty and lots of difficulty knowing what exactly is going on. But I think you're right that there are some uncertainties at different levels. There are different levels of problems that she faces. We're not quite sure how serious, but trying to at least lay those out kind of layer by layer, I think would be a useful exercise.
And Greg, the problems are at multiple levels, as you said. Nobody knows what would be the manifestation and which way will one problem manifest, and can it really multiply? So maybe geopolitics and economy could probably play out or something else. So nobody really knows, as you rightly say, what may or may not happen. And I was talking to a very senior guy in South Africa today itself. He is executive director for Institute for Global Dialogue. They sit with UNISA, which is University of South Africa, and Chinese, as we all know, have been putting a lot of influence and money. And what I was being told by this gentleman, his name is Dr. Pilani, he was saying that Chinese are now going all over Africa and pumping a lot of money with academic institutions and think tanks in that part of the world, so that, they could probably influence or try and, build up certain, kind of a narrative in that part of the world. So Chinese narrative will be different in Asia, different in Europe, different in the US, and different in Africa. So that is why I'm saying their problems are at multiple levels, and they try and sort of understand and identify the weak nerves in different parts of the world and then try and lever it. So we should keep our eyes and ears open, and I'm only waiting, Greg and colleagues, what may or may not happen with Taiwan. Because that would be the real test of autocracies and democracies. And so we have a lot at stake when it comes to Taiwan.
It's complicated further because it seems to me, I'm very sympathetic to the Biden administration. There are lots of friends of mine in it. But as far as I can tell, they really don't have a policy toward China. It's kind of absent. They've inherited the Trump sanctions and kept those on. They haven't done the things that one expected to offer some openings to China. They haven't, and they've upped the ante also on Taiwan. So it's a little, I find that nervous making at this end as well. There just doesn't seem to be and it's not an administration that's particularly long on talent with respect to Asia. It's got an awful lot of talented people, but it's not stocked much with Asianists. And that also worries me.
I think we should give it a bit of time. I think, yeah, go on. Is it background? I don't know. Somebody made a comment? No. Okay, next topic is that we are launching a series of 5 courses for policymakers and executives and who else? People from policymakers, executives, and international organizations located in South Korea. So it will be on internet governance. It's a free sort of course we're providing for them. Any comment on that, especially in recruiting these people?
If anybody has ideas about how to recruit good South Koreans to it, this is something we wanted to do. And there was this done for the Pacific Century Institute, on whose board I sit. And it has obviously very Asian focus, but also a Korean focus. So we wanted to play to that. So any connections or help people have in recruiting interesting people to participate in this from South Korea would be great.
Okay. So no comment on that.
Is there a write-up of some sort, like a short summary?
We should send that around, Patty. Yeah.
I mean, I know some people in South Korea, but not sure if they would be the right profile or not, but perhaps there'd be some interest. I'm not sure.
Yeah, basically we want people who will be interested to take these courses. Courses are free and online, but exclusive. But we want people who are informed, and maybe course is not the right word to use. Maybe it's more of participatory, interactive conversation. But yeah, we will present internet governance from different perspectives, and we do like people that benefit from it, but also they can add something and they will be interested to learn. And as I said, we're looking at policymakers, we're looking at executives in private sector, in international organizations, civil society, but you want a sort of executive level. Okay.
Understood.
And we should circulate a piece of paper on it as soon as we have one, huh?
Yes, I would circulate it.
And probably this makes me think we should call this certainly not a course. I don't think we ever attended that. We should call it a symposium, or maybe even a conversation. I'm not quite sure. We want it to be very pretty informal and very interactive as we can make it. I think we'll even do the presentations in these sessions as a conversation back and forth, kind of Q&A.
Yeah, but we want to also raise the level of awareness on these each topics. So there are 5 dimensions of it that we will be looking at, and we want to raise awareness at the same time. So it's dialogue, but some awareness. Yeah, maybe a dialogue would be good, Greg, or do you want to call it
that's probably a good idea.
dialogue?
Yeah, call these dialogues on internet governance.
The only thing is, I think Koreans are very formal. Is dialogue would be a good sort of title if they're formal people? I don't know.
I think so. I think that works.
Okay, so maybe that's what we will use. Anyway, any comment on that? Any connections would be welcome. Next thing, Puran sent me a piece from Foreign Policy in, I think, Delhi. It's quite interesting piece that series of articles, but Puran has contributed as well. And Puran, would you like to just give everybody a very short summary, some information about it?
Thank you, Pari. First of all, I'll be happy to draw out. I mean, I have, a list of some think tanks in South Korea, some bilateral people, and since they operate quite friendly in India, so I'll be happy to draw out a small list and write back to you so that you could probably have a look at who could be, one of our, stakeholders or beneficiary when you undertake the South Korea related work. So I'll be very happy to draw up a list of some, important institutions and people, and they could be, sort of considered. And if you find them good enough, happy to sort of assist and support the forum. One.
Very much. Remember that we need people located, residing in Korea. Just remember.
These people would be very helpful because the first thing would be that if we could probably, regardless of the people that we are going to take on board from South Korea, if you could probably have a look at organizations and institutions, and then we could probably, because getting anyone on board might sound easy, but getting the right people on board is probably, especially from places where English is, the second or the third language. I mean, sometimes things go pretty wrong. So from that point of view, I'll be happy to sort of draw out a list. And if you feel that 1 or 2 of them are okay, then I'll be happy to sort of, so that, we have the right connections, and through the right connections, we could end up getting the right people.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, so 1. And secondly, I was asked by this think tank in South Africa to work on a piece which could relate to role of business as a force for good in the backdrop of digital sustainability landscape, which means that how are the businesses changing the role in this community, in the society that they have been operating in? Is it purely philanthropic? Is it purely altruistic? Or is it driven by their corporate social responsibility and maybe some business motive or interest? So that was the one part. The second part was that how do we really locate the whole landscape of sustainability? How did it really evolve, emerge over the years, and where does it really sit now? And in the third part, I try and deal with what is happening at the global level with regard to the climate change and sustainability. So I'm really trying to go back to 2012 when Rio Plus 20 happened. That was a time when review of MDGs was undertaken, and then transition to SDGs happened. And then now we also have climate treaty, which is Paris Climate Agreement 2015, and SDG and Paris Climate Treaty coincided together. So then I'm trying to look at what is really the overall focus of the treaty. So treaty was all about what? And now at COP26, which is happening in Glasgow, starting tomorrow, we will then be looking around at how. So from what to how, and then I'm trying to take a step ahead of net zero, because by 2030, Paris Agreement says that countries have got to put a cap on their carbon emissions by 50%. So halving their emissions by 50%, peaking of the coal by 2020, which has already gone by. And then finally, the countries have to commit to go net zero by 2050 or earlier. But what really happened in G20 in Rome today was that the communique says, and that too in the backdrop of what China has done. I mean, they are saying we will do it only by 2060. So the communique is no longer about by 2050 or earlier. It says by 2050 or thereabout. But I'm taking a little bolder call with regard to raising a question that all these things are fine, timelines are fine, halving the carbon emissions by half is fine by 2030, going net zero by 2050 is okay, but what about net positive ecosystem where companies need to get in addition to policy, which is usually set by the government, and then the advocacy, which is usually undertaken by civil society, academic institutions, think tanks, and NGOs. And then I close by saying that we have a slightly bolder agenda ahead of us, where we need to really begin to work beyond net zero. And going forward, we have got to find our ways and means through policy, through public-private partnerships, and by bringing NGOs on board to see to it that what really happens beyond 2050. So I'm saying everything has got to converge around the whole model and idea and the ecosystem of governments going net positive, which means that you take less from the Mother Earth and put more back into it. And that would probably be the ideal, quote unquote, situation going beyond net zero, because net zero means nothing. So now China is saying we will do it by 2060. India is saying the same. Russians are saying the same. And others are, sort of trying to bang on 2050 from the point of view of reaching net zero. So that's the broad sort of feature of what I have tried to capture. And I would be happy if you find it useful. And if there is anything for me to add or take out, I'll be very happy. But it is going to be out in South Africa.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I read it. What I'd like to do, if you have time, a shorter, updated version of it with little bit more emphasis on technology would be really great for us to publish. Because right now, with the event taking place, you could actually, that gives you an excuse to update that article. It's already written. You can summarize some parts. If you have time, I think that would be a wonderful article. Especially,
I'll be happy to do it. Happy to do it, Pari. And do you need the same length, or you want me to sort of put it in a...
I think summarize it, it won't be a bad idea. There are areas that I think it's easy to take out and then emphasize what is happening right now. Right after the gathering, I think will be a very good time to just publish it and update it. Any comments?
I'll do it. I'll do it.
Any comments?
No, that sounds just right to me. If you can do it, that'd be great, Puran.
I will, great.
Thank you very much, Puran. Thank you. Any comment from anybody? Anything anyone wants to discuss? No? Okay. Then on that note, I want to thank you everybody for being here and wish you a wonderful week ahead, and we see you next week. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Good week, everybody. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.